It is 2021. This is the first vlog for the year, and I thought I'd start off by getting to know each other a little bit more. Now, last year, I decided to double down my efforts on creating content here on social media. I started this YouTube channel and my TikTok page around the same time last year. And since then, thousands of you have joined me on this journey. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you. It means a lot to me to know that the content I'm creating is something that you guys enjoy, something that gives value to you guys. At the time of recording this video, there's almost 3,000 subscribers here on YouTube, and almost 55,000 of you guys are following me on TikTok. And honestly, that's so crazy to me. So thank you so much for the support. I've made a lot of new friends last year, and so I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to reintroduce myself, share a little bit more, answer your questions, and towards the end of the video, get to know you guys a little bit more as well. So I asked you guys to send me some questions on Instagram and on YouTube, and in this video, I'm going to be answering those questions. Let's get started. By the way, if you're interested in specific topics, if you scrub through the timeline of this video, you're going to notice chapter markers that I've labeled. This video might get a bit lengthy, so in case you want to skip to specific parts, you have that option. But hopefully you don't miss the last part where I ask you guys to share a little bit about yourselves in the comments below. Also, this video is going to be a little bit more off the cuff compared to my other vlogs. Kind of similar how I do my Patreon vlogs. So I'll be answering these questions a little bit more candidly. So I think we can start with questions pertaining to my personal journey as a martial artist, my background, things like that. A bunch of you guys asked similar questions as well, and so I'm going to start off with this question and then from there branch off and answer other people's questions as well. So let's start with this. What introduced you to Arnis? How did you start practicing it, and what made you stick with it? So my first exposure to Arnis was as a PE class in elementary, I think in the 5th grade. It didn't really make much of an impact. That's just my first exposure to it, so it wasn't particularly something that I found interesting. But when I enrolled for it as a PE class in college, so that's fast forward about 7 years after? 6 years after. So if I'm correct with it being in the 5th grade. So fast forward to college, I took it as a PE class in Ateneo under the instructorship of Grandmaster Richard Galago. And that's when it actually made an impact for me. That's the class where Arnis became interesting to me. I learned about the sport aspect, sport format, sparring, things like that. So that's when I actually became invested in it. That's when I gained a strong interest in it. And from there, I joined the college varsity team. I started competing in competitions, local, national, international, all the way up to the World Championships. And I don't really compete in mainstream format competitions anymore. I'm not necessarily closing the door on it, but for now, I'm at the phase where I'm exploring all these other aspects besides the sport format. When did you realize Arnis was something you wanted to keep doing? It's not really something I woke up and... It's not really like I woke up and decided, oh, this is it, I'm gonna keep doing this forever, or like there was something that happened that made me decide that. It's something that kind of just gradually happened over time. I think a better way of looking at it is that I just haven't stopped practicing. I might not always be learning new things. I might not always be working towards the same goals that I was working on. I might be focused on sports competitions one day, and then later on, I'm focused on just looking cool, just, playing with different motions. Arnis is pretty vast and diverse enough for me to always stay busy. There's always something different to do. And so yeah, I just haven't stopped practicing. It wasn't necessarily a decision. I'm just still in love with martial art. What is your Arnis style? I'm currently not affiliated with any school or system, nor do I identify with a specific style. If you ask me what styles I've learned from, that's an easier question to answer. For the most part of my FMA journey so far, I studied under Kali Arnis Martial Arts Organization's style and system with a huge emphasis on sports competitions and sport format-oriented motions, movements, tactics, and dynamics. I also constantly explore, experiment on my own, take influences from other people I meet. I often cross-train, meet up with practitioners of different styles, exchange ideas. When the pandemic started, I started taking online courses, sought out digital curriculums, digital resources, and basically what I've been doing is trying to get as much knowledge as I can from different sources, comparing and contrasting for myself, and developing my own mindset, my own philosophies that address my particular needs. And specifically, that's really just deeper understanding of combat dynamics, motion, but also there's a lot of emphasis on art and just self-expression. I do Arnis, at least I used to do Arnis competitively, but now I'm at a phase where it's mostly a means for self-expression. It's something I like to do because I feel the most me I can be when I'm practicing. And so yeah, but to answer the question, I do take a lot of influences, and so I don't identify with this is my style, this is my one style, but I wouldn't combine everything and say that I've created my own style either. So I identify more as an arnisador or a Filipino martial artist or a martial artist in general. At present, I'm also trying to learn the Campo Original as a whole curriculum. So it's something I'm working on my own time with some guidance from Guru Paulo as well as their online program, which I will leave a link to below if you guys want to check this out, as well as some other resources that I've been using for my own training. Okay, what other martial arts are you interested in? I've dabbled with a couple of other things in the past. Boxing, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, Kendo, but I say all these things without implying any amount of skill in these areas. As I said, I've dabbled with them. If I were to be asked what other martial arts or martial sports I might want to put more time in, it would probably end up being either boxing or jiu-jitsu. I think those sports, those martial arts would complement what I already know and would also fill in those gaps of empty hand techniques and empty hand movements that I haven't given much attention to in my holistic development as a martial artist. I think I'd also like to answer this question by naming two particular FMA styles that I'd also like to explore more. And honestly, there's a higher chance I'm going to explore these styles before I explore boxing and jiu-jitsu more. As I said, FMA is pretty diverse, so it's always keeping me busy. There's always different styles to learn from. And something I'm really interested in learning is balintawak. There's just something about the movements and how they practice the close range combat that's very intriguing to me. It's very interesting. Visually, I like it. I'd be interested in exploring that more. I'd also be interested in exploring Pikiti Tertia. Again, I'm interested in learning different methodologies. Will you try fencing or HEMA? Probably. Those are things that are interesting to me as well because they're also weapon arts, weapon sports. I don't have any concrete plans yet, just like how I don't have any concrete plans with these other styles in martial arts that I've mentioned. For now, I'm enjoying just doing what I'm already doing, but I think I would likely be exploring these things in the future as well. So there are a couple of you who asked questions about how to go about being a beginner. What's the best technique for beginners? Where would you recommend day one beginner to start? What's a good skill progression for Arnis? Meaning, where does one start and where does one work to? And I would answer this with, it depends. It sounds cliche, but it depends. It depends on your goals. The way I see martial arts is that you have three different aspects, right? You learn the martial art as a whole, but you can express this through art. You can express this through as a combat sport. You can express this through self-defense, or you can express this academically. So you can explore it with an academic frame of mind. Depending on your goals and depending on the system, that's going to dictate how to go about starting and where you're going to progress to. And so maybe my advice, as I say that, is to find a style or a system or a club that's in line with your personal goals. Because, for example, maybe you want to learn how to defend yourself and the club that you join mainly just trains for sports competitions. Those are two different things. They'll have overlapping factors, but one is focused towards one goal, whereas your goal isn't exactly the same. So find a club, style, school, or system that's in line with your particular goals. And if you don't know what your goals are, if you just want to learn for the sake of learning, if you're curious, you just want to see what Arnis is all about or what it's like, then to that, I'd answer that it doesn't really matter where you start, just start somewhere, and whatever progression you're offered in that school, just stick with it and see if that works for you. And if it doesn't, you are always free to change schools, find somewhere else that will fit your needs better. So basically, just get started, guys. Don't overthink it. I don't believe in wasting time over doing something you later on realize isn't actually for you, because at the end of the day, you'll still have learned something. You'll learn a bit more about yourself and you'll learn a bit more about the art. What do you do for a living? Besides all the martial arts stuff, I'm actually a licensed psychologist. So I practice counseling and therapy. So that's what I would say is my main form of work right now. How do you think discipline plays a role in the process of learning martial arts? Well, I guess it depends on how deep you want to learn something, right? If this is something you're doing casually, then I don't think discipline is as big of a factor. But if this is something you wanted to learn with a deep understanding, if this is something you wanted to excel in, I think discipline is important in staying consistent with what you're doing, staying consistent with your practice. Having said that though, I don't think discipline was the main factor that kept me consistent with my own practice, because my practice has always been driven by passion, by fun, by interest. I don't train when I'm not interested, and I don't train in things I'm not interested in. And I acknowledge my gaps as a martial artist because of that. But if you wanted to have a more holistic development, if you wanted to cover all the areas a martial artist is supposed to cover, then I think discipline is very important. But for my goals, for my purposes, I have always progressed through the art by following what I wanted to do. That's just how things work for me. I'm not saying that's how you should go about it. Again, it depends on your goals. What's the difference in practicing between thick sticks and thin sticks? Are they meant for specific movements or actions, or does it depend on the practitioner? So yes, it depends on the practitioner, because again, different people have different goals, different styles, different approaches. So I'll answer this with how I use different sticks for my purposes. And when I'm doing exhibitions, exhibition tournaments, or just demonstrations, and I wanted to emphasize speed, then I'm going to use lighter sticks, because it's going to be easier for me to manipulate those kinds of sticks. It would be easier for me to generate speed without wearing out my arms really fast, because if you go full speed with heavier sticks, then it takes a higher toll on your endurance. Now, if I'm practicing for sparring tournaments, I'm practicing for combat, then I might want sticks that are a bit weightier, because those are going to build certain attributes such as power generation, things like that. And when you train with heavier sticks, the lighter sticks feel a lot lighter to you. It's kind of like how when you lift weights, the more weight you keep adding, the lighter weights become easier and easier to lift. And so sometimes I'll also train with extra heavy weights like steel pipes or hardwood sticks, or just adding weights to the stick. That way, when I hold normal weighted sticks, they're easier to manipulate. So again, it depends on your goals. I think there is a place and purpose for different weights and different lengths and things like that. What is your favorite book? Okay, 2 books come to mind. The first one is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. Second one, more recently, is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F***. I would put those as my top 2 right now. How do you get smooth flow of hand movements when using solo stick? Is it better to keep the free hand idle or not? Okay, so, well, thank you for thinking it's smooth. Sometimes I find it awkward myself. What my live hand does while I'm moving with a single stick, it's going to depend on what I'm trying to accomplish. If I'm sparring, it's not going to move as much. I keep it here ready to check if I need to maybe hook the arm when we go into a closer range or if I'm going to parry, grab the stick, grab the opponent's stick, things like that. So it's not as flowy as when I'm doing my carenza or when I'm doing my anyo. So these are movements that are a bit more artistic. And when it comes to that, the hand is just really moving in a way that I feel like feels nice or looks nice. There's a lot of experimenting that goes on there. And I think though, the way the live hand or the left hand gets developed from your non-dominant hand is just practicing double stick, practicing stick and knife or espada y daga. So those will develop the motions that your live hand can do. But yeah, for me, it's just always been, besides those things, constant practice of free flow and exploring and experimenting. So to answer the question, explore, play around with movements, practice in front of a mirror, and you'll kind of just get there. Can you twirl the stick after impact so you can land a secondary hit? Okay, so I asked this person to elaborate what he meant with that, and what he was asking for is how that would be accomplished or if that's possible. And I'm not sure if this answers the question, but we do have a concept of double striking using the wrist and forearm to generate a second strike. So you throw, for example, a diagonal strike, and then as that strike finishes, you rotate the wrist and the forearm to generate a second strike. So it's not technically a twirl per se, but the mechanics used to execute that motion is similar to the mechanics that you practice and develop, or the attributes that you develop. The wrist flexibility, the dexterity, those are things that get developed when you practice twirling. At least that's how I was taught, that's how things were explained to me. What is the most important aspect of your training? That's easy for me to answer, and for me, it's having fun. I have to enjoy what I'm doing, otherwise I'm not going to do it. And again, as I mentioned earlier, that has its downsides, that would leave gaps in my development as a martial artist. And I'm okay with that because being a complete martial artist is not my goal. My goal is to have fun. My goal is to enjoy the art. My goal is to enjoy what I'm doing. Now, second to this is being authentic and honest with my practice. So as I continue to practice motivated by what I think is interesting to me, I think it's still important for me to know what's what. It's important for me to be able to distinguish that there are certain things I'm doing that aren't going to work in a real fight. And there are certain things that I know I can't explain very well, and so I shouldn't be pretending that I understand it. So there are things that I think people expect martial artists to be able to execute, practice, understand that I don't, and I have to be honest enough to know that those are things beyond the scope of what I actually practice. So I think that's also important to me. So for example, as a practitioner, I might enjoy doing fancy, silly drills that are meant to be aesthetically pleasing but not actually functional for a real fight or a self-defense situation. So if I'm, for example, teaching, I shouldn't be marketing these things as something that they're not, and I shouldn't be pretending to know things that I don't. So again, most important thing is having fun, and second to that is honesty and authenticity with how I practice. So now I'm inviting you guys to share a little bit about yourselves in the comments below. Comment something about your journey, your experiences, maybe answer one of these questions, or better yet, answer this question. What's the most interesting martial arts experience you've ever had? I'll be going through the comments of this video to chat with you guys a bit, and I invite you to check out other people's comments and stories and sharings as well. I think it would be a great way to start the year by making some new friends. If you've made it this far into the video, thanks again for tuning in. Thank you for the crazy amount of support in my growth as a YouTuber, as a content creator. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video.